The public library is here for everybody. And our city, even though it's not like a New York City or a San Francisco, we have a wide variety of values and opinions and cultural ideas. And we're here to provide that information and those things for all of those people across the board. I'm sure we have things in our library that I personally wouldn't like, but I'm not going to check it out. But it's okay if somebody else does.
Welcome to In Our Town, Conversations with Springfieldians Making a Difference. I'm your host, Tom Carlson, publisher of the Springfield Daily Citizen. If you'd like to comment on this episode, our email is inourtown@sgfcitizen.org. We'd love to hear from you. Today is Monday, April 24th, and our podcast today is going to be about the book banning controversy that is being debated in the state legislature. I think a timeline would probably be helpful. In August of last year, the legislature passed a law directing public schools to adopt policies relating to certain types of books that should be available to students or not available. School employees who violate that law are subject to a fine of $2,000 and up to 1 year in jail. Then in November of 2022, Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft went one step further. His offices distribute state money to the 160 public libraries in Missouri. He proposed a regulation that would deny public libraries state money unless they adopt policies that regulate material available for minors. Over 18,000 people have commented on the Ashcroft rule, with most people opposed to it, and that's according to Mr. Ashcroft. In response to the law affecting public schools, the American Civil Liberties Union filed a lawsuit in February of this year to challenge the last year's law banning inappropriate books in public schools. The Missouri Association of School Librarians and the Missouri Library Association have joined in that lawsuit, and they're asking the court to either find that the law is unconstitutional or to clarify how and when it applies. Now, this spring, the Missouri House of Representatives passed a legislation withdrawing state money that had been previously earmarked for public libraries. The supporters of that legislation were candid and said it was in punishment for the public libraries joining in the ACLU lawsuit. However, recently, Springfield Senator Lincoln Huff restored those funds in the Senate's bill. And at the same time, there is other legislation now pending in the House and the Senate that would impose criminal penalties, this time on public library employees who checked out inappropriate books to minors. Supporters of the legislation claim that it is just common sense that certain books should not be made available to minors. Opponents claim that the legislation is in search of a solution for a problem that does not exist. People on both sides of the issue seem to agree on one thing, however, and that is that this is just part of an ongoing cultural war between conservatives and progressives relating to issues like LGBTQ+, critical race theory, and the policies concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion. With me today to explain the new proposed law and its potential impact on library patrons here in Springfield and Greene County, Missouri, is Regina Cooper. She's been director of the library since 2009. Regina, welcome to In Our Town.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, thank you. Well, what is the current status of the legislation as you understand it?
It changes almost every day, but today, as far as I know, the Secretary of State's rule that he proposed last November is going into effect on May 18th, and we have to abide by those rules. Now, he is still trying to get that rule put into statute, which is still being debated in the House and Senate. There are 2 House bills and there's 1 Senate rule. Those pieces of legislation are the ones that actually have the fines and potential jail time. If those go through, that will be really bad. I was just last week taking a look at the rule to see where we are already in compliance with it, which is in the case of many parts of the rule, because several things he wants is for libraries to have policies that are written. So last week, I pulled out the rule since it was published in the Missouri Register, and that makes it go into effect, and looked at all the aspects of the rule and which ones we are already in compliance with. several of the things reveal that we have to have policies for the way we select age-appropriate materials, and that's a lot of what the rule talks about. We already have those policies. We select materials for children, for teenagers, and for adults. Also, it talks about policies for letting people know what your programs are. We have programs that we advertise as for adults, for families and kids, for tweens and teens. We're already doing that. We have several policies in place. And then one big thing that he wants in the rule is for us to have a way for parents to ask for reconsideration of materials that are in the library that they object to. We have had that for years. Way before I got here, this is standard operating procedure for libraries. We have that. It's available to the public on our website. Anytime somebody objects to something and either want it moved to a different age area in the library or ask for it to be removed altogether, all they have to do is print out that form, or they can get one from our staff. They write down what their objections are and why. We give them an opportunity on the form to offer an alternative title. They fill it out with their name and address. And then the next thing that happens is it goes before a committee of librarians. They go back and look at the material again, and they make a recommendation to me, and they look at the reviews about whether or not it should be removed from the library or moved to a different place in the library. And then when they make that recommendation, I write a letter to the patron and explain what the decision is. The committee, and I have agreed with them, has never recommended since I've been here that we remove a book or a movie from the collection. However, the committee has recommended from time to time that we move something like from a children's area to a teen area, or from a teen area to an adult area, and we have done that. Because when the committee looked at it, they decided, well, we agree with the patron, and it's more appropriate in that other area.
Who is this committee?
Different staff members, and it's a little bit different every time. The head of the committee is our head of collection services, and then she brings in other appropriate people from the different branches. The complaint starts out at the branch where the person turns it in.
I see. Well, it sounds like this rule isn't requiring you to do anything you weren't already doing.
Except for one thing. Well, two things. When you get to the last part of the rule, they want us to write a policy that guarantees that we will not grant access to any book or movie or material that a parent disagrees with or guardian. There is not a way physically for us to do that. I mean, they can't give us a list and say, we don't want our child to check out the books that are on this list. We can't keep the children from checking out things anywhere in the library. In fact, in our collection development policy, it says that it is the responsibility of the parent and the legal guardian to monitor what their children are reading or checking out. So if they don't want anybody under 18 that they're responsible for checking out something particular, they're going to need to be with them at the library and decide what they check out, because it's not possible for the library to do it.
Why isn't it possible?
Well, we have a integrated library system that's automatic, computerized. It checks out to people.
You would have to just totally change all your procedures then.
Exactly. And we're working on that. And we've got a committee that we're going to be meeting, and we're going to try to decide what we think we should do. And people are not going to like it if it comes to this. And we'll have to present it to the board, and they will have to vote on it. But the only real way to do that, and some other libraries are considering this as well, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but would be that a parent comes in with their minor and signs an agreement. They have to sign now to take responsibility for whatever the child checks out. But we will have to add a statement that says you are responsible for monitoring what your child checks out. And if they sign that, that will give the child access, which they have now, to anything, anywhere in the library. We cannot divide it up by age group because the computer system won't look at it and check out something. Oh, you can only check out children's materials. You can only check out teen materials. You can only check out adult materials. So I think a lot of parents are not going to like that. Now, maybe the parents who are very particular about what their children read might like that, but I wouldn't like that. if my child were restricted from that, but I would watch what my child checked out. And the whole point is, like, there might be two families, and family A is fine with a lot of books, and family B doesn't like the books that family A likes. If it goes farther, this would keep families from checking out certain things and sort of telling the other families, well, you can't check out those because I don't like those for my family.
Okay, so let me give you an example.
Okay.
Let's say there's some book that deals with gay and lesbian issues, okay? And maybe it's a teenager. And so there's some book in the young adult section deals with that issue.
Right.
But Mrs. Jones over here says that she doesn't want her child looking at that stuff. Mrs. Smith, on the other hand, thinks it's fine and it's a good idea, it's available. When you have a situation like that, question number one is, well, where does that book get put?
Well, it depends on what age it is written for. And we need to go back and clarify. Neither the rule nor the proposed legislation nor the law that was passed last year specifically speaks to LGBTQ material. The law passed last year speaks to visually, sexually explicit material. It would have to be pictures. The rule and the legislation that they're considering is material that is pornographic or obscene, and a book that talks about LGBTQ is not obscene or pornographic.
So that's not a problem so far. Okay,
right.
Well, I'm glad you clarified
Yes.
that. Is it just visual materials then, as opposed to printed materials that's getting regulated?
In the law, yes. In the rule and the legislation, as I understand it, there's a whole section in legislation that defines what is considered obscene and pornographic. And just the words on the printed page, I don't believe, come under any of those definitions, although I can't swear to that because the definitions are 2 or 3 pages long.
And so reasonable people might disagree whether a book falls in one category or another.
Right.
And how is the library supposed to police what teenager comes in and looks at?
Well, that's the whole point. The library cannot. We could never be responsible for it. We can't in the future. Most all libraries say it's the parents and the legal guardian's responsibility to monitor what their children read, look at, see, whatever. We can't. We're not parents.
Well, and you don't have enough employees to
true
wander
too.
around the book stacks with everybody that
is true.
That's underage.
Yes.
To see what they're looking at.
Yes.
Well, you said you've been here since January 2009, I think. That's almost 14 years now. Tell us about how frequent do you get concerns or requests about the material?
Well, it varies from year to year. It goes up and down. I believe 2019 was the highest number that we'd received since I've been here, and that was around 13. And last year we got 1. This year we had just 1, and then just last week we got 3 all in a row. And they were offered different kinds of things, and they didn't really fit what the legislation or this rule is. Like, one of them was an adult book, and it had a chapter title toward the very end of the book. A lot of people wouldn't think it was very nice what the chapter title said, and this gentleman, what he was complaining about. Well, I've run into books like that myself. You're reading a book and you get to something that just kind of offends you.
Sure.
So you know what? I just didn't read the rest of it. But I didn't tell somebody else that they couldn't read it, and it was still in the library. I'm sorry he was offended, but I didn't write the book. The book was well reviewed. The subject was interesting. It was just that one line in the book that happened to be a chapter title.
It sounds like a lot of librarians feel like they're being appointed the job as a morality police.
Exactly. And that's not what our job is. In fact, the public library, okay, I'll try not to get too excited here. The public library is here for everybody. And our city, even though it's not like a New York City or a San Francisco, we have a wide variety of values and opinions and cultural ideas. And we're here to provide that information and those things for all of those people across the board. I'm sure we have things in our library that I personally wouldn't like, but I'm not going to check it out. But it's okay if somebody else does. And I'm not the one, nor are any of our staff the ones that get to decide what everybody reads. People should be able to decide that for themselves and be able to have access to a wide range of materials at their public library. Technically, we serve 298,000 plus, but not everybody has a library card. And it seems like maybe last time I checked, we had about 100,000 people that had a library card, and that varies from year to year too because of moving around and people changing addresses. We expire everybody's card at the 1-year mark, and they just have to check in with us and make sure they're at the same place that they were so we can get in touch with them.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Hello, I'm Jeff Kessinger. I'm the Reader Engagement Editor for the Springfield Daily Citizen. A day in the life of the Reader Engagement Editor starts around 8 a.m., getting the newsletters, SGF AM, all ready to go, making sure the forecast is up to date for you, and gathering links from other news organizations. After that, I spend a few hours on social media. I have to schedule our posts, have to check the comments, and make sure everybody's behaving nicely. In the afternoon, I usually turn my attention to editing some of our freelance contributors, and I also do some reporting of my own on arts and culture happenings. Springfield has a great arts community, musicians, visual artists, performance artists. It's important that we give back to the arts community and thank them for the color that they add to our community and to our world. And so by reporting on events that are happening or coming up, I'm helping people find ways to connect with the artists around here.
What's your impression from people here in the community, how they feel about this proposed rule? Are you getting an earful?
I have gotten a lot of support from a lot of people in the community. Now, I know that there are people who think this rule is great. A couple of our legislators said to me that they thought this rule was great when we were talking to them in January on a trip to Jeff City. But most people have not said that to me. But I know there are people that think that. And over time, people have come to visit with me about the library and what kind of books and displays and things that we have. And some of those have been about LGBTQ, as you brought up as an example. And there have been some people that thought we were having a program that was trying to recruit people to that lifestyle. But the program was not to do that. It was to provide information for the people who are in that lifestyle. And that's two entirely different things. And that group certainly deserves library service just as much as any other political opinion group or social opinion group. And, as I just said, we have information about everything. And there's a saying that's gone on since I was in library school years ago, that if you don't have something in your library to offend somebody, you're not doing your job. But let me say
yes, please.
The
Go
other
ahead.
side of that is sometimes people are conservative because they're religious. And I'm a religious person. I have a certain kind of faith. But we serve everybody. We have, for example, books that are labeled Christian fiction. Because when I got here, they didn't have that in the library I came from. But one of the reasons is we have a lot of people that we serve that are Christians and like to read Christian fiction and know going in that that's what we're getting. And so to make it easier, I believe this was the reason, before I got here, they decided to put those in a certain section so that some people could find them easier and our librarians could do what's called Reader's Advisor to help people find the materials that they want. So we certainly serve people on all sides of the spectrum, the very most conservative and the very most liberal and everything in between. And people are able to make requests of things that we buy. And if it's reasonable for us to have it in a public library collection, we buy it. Like we might not buy it if it's a really academic book because we're a part of a consortium where we can borrow academic books for people. But if it's for the public library, if we've got the money and we haven't run out of book money that year, we'll buy it for you. We are open to suggestions from people. And like one of the concerns that we had just recently, they suggested a book we didn't have. And so we now have it on order for them. And we will catalog it and we will put it out for them to have. So we do take suggestions from people as well.
It seems to me, from what I've read in getting ready to conduct this podcast, that there's been a major policy proposal change, because in the past it was left to local libraries to decide what was appropriate for their community. Now, with this proposal, there is a uniform approach for the whole state. Would you agree with that?
I would agree that, yes, there is, and that's different. When you go to professional school to study to be a librarian, one of the things that you learn is that you need to look at your community and what the needs of that community are, and that's what you provide for that community. And so this is taking it away from us deciding in Springfield-Greene County, and this is for everybody in the entire state. So yes, that is problematic as far as I'm concerned as well.
There is a famous Supreme Court case dealing with pornography. It got really difficult in those years. That was back in the 60s and 70s. People in one city or on one coast would think was obscene.
Exactly.
People in another part of the country did not. And so you couldn't come up with a standard definition that everybody agreed to. Then it got even worse, because you might have a publisher who's selling books or magazines or something in an urban area, but he's also trying to sell it across the United States. And there might be a court decision in Los Angeles or somewhere that says that that's acceptable, but in a more conservative part of the country, there would be something saying it's not. And so the Supreme Court was asked to step in and try to make some sense out of all this, because you can't have inconsistent rules. And so what they did is they came up with this idea of what they called community standard.
Right.
And they left it to the particular community to decide what was appropriate based upon the standards of that community. So I just reflect on that, because there seem to be some parallels here with what may happen at the state level. Right now, the proposal from Secretary of State Ashcroft says that if it was found that the local library was not in compliance, that they would not distribute some state funds that come to the library. But how much money is that, for example?
Well, once again, that varies every year. And this fiscal year that we're in currently, there's two levels. It would mean about $200,000 in state aid, but also it would take away all of the federal grants that flow through the state library, because he has made it clear that that's going to be taken away as well. And so we get a lot of grants from year to year that make it go way up. And we can live without the state aid that would be taken away if we didn't comply, or that the House Budget Chair has taken away in Springfield. We won't like it, and it will mean we will buy fewer books, or we won't do something. But the rural libraries in the state of Missouri are really going to be hit hard. And let me go back and speak to that other part. This gets kind of complicated.
It does.
With the federal money that comes down through the state to us, those are things that we have often in Springfield and other libraries. We've written a grant to try out a pilot project or a new service. For example, we now have a full-time early literacy librarian, which we've had for several years. But when I first got here, that was a grant-funded position. And we were able to get money from the federal government through the state library to pay that salary and to open that office. That has been so helpful to us, and they work so much with the folks at Jordan Valley Community Health Center and the WIC Center, and provide books and services and teach the parents how to work with their kids and learning and reading. So we were able, with that grant funding for 2 or 3 years, to have it, and then we were able to roll it into our budget, because we found out that that was a good thing and that was a needed service. We have a makerspace at the Midtown Public Library, and we also have a computer training center. Those also were started with federal funds that came through the state library. Those kind of things would be taken away from us if we are found that we are not complying with this rule. And so that would hurt us a great deal as well. We just got a new grant. We're excited about this, and we're going to work with partners. And this is such a collaborative city, you know that. And we work with a lot of different partners. We got a grant. We're going to be able to purchase a mobile kitchen cart, and we're going to work on food literacy and People are going to be able to come in for programs, and we're going to teach them how to feed themselves healthily and how to prepare foods. We already have lots of information and books and cookbooks and books that will explain what you should eat and how you should prepare it. That's great. And we're able to do this and start this program because we got this federal money sent down through the state library to us. If we lose all of our state aid, and he's considering everything, not just our literal state aid, but also all this grant funding. And the other thing, the rule is very vague. So do we lose it on day one that one parent comes in and doesn't like a book that their child has checked out at the library? Do we lose it after 4 or 5 people? Do we ever get to apply to get it back? Have we lost it forever? It does not explain any of that in the rule.
If the rule becomes law, I assume that you will attempt to comply with it.
Yes, and we're attempting to comply with it now, what we can. But without changing the policy that we talked about a while ago, we can't comply with every single item in the rule.
Are you making a prediction for how this will all play out?
So, when I first heard about the rule, the Secretary and I have worked together since he's been in office as Secretary of State. We've always had a good relationship. He's been the best supporter of libraries.
Well, actually, he's got more money for you than
Yes,
previous Secretary of State.
We were 100% behind him and appreciative of everything he had done, and we were very surprised that this came about. So I asked to meet with him, and he was going to be in Springfield, and he came to my office, and I asked him why and if he could explain some of the things, and I asked him some questions that I had that I didn't understand about the rule. And he said, well, I'm not sending somebody to your library to investigate and catch you not doing this. So I'm not sure how it's going to be enforced, but I don't want to take a chance that it's not going to be enforced because we still need that state aid. I was a little perturbed. You may know that he has now entered the governor's race.
That's right.
And he showed his video, and I watched his video where he announced it, and he listed several things that he had done that he thought were very good and that Missourians would want to vote for him as a result of that. But one of them really bothered me because he said something to the effect, I can't quote it exactly, that he was working to keep obscene materials out of libraries. I guess that depends on your definition of obscene, but we don't purposely go out and seek obscene materials to put in our library.
Is there anything else that we ought to talk about on this subject I failed to ask you about?
Well, the one last thing I mentioned a while ago, just to finalize it, the second thing that we're not doing yet, but we will comply with, is when somebody fills out a reconsideration form, we now will have to post it on our website and post the resolution of what happened. I don't have a problem with that. We can do that. It's just more work for us. We will have to redact that information because the person's name and address and all that, because that's private information. We would never share personal information from a patron. So we will do that. I did worry that there are some groups around the country who have formed who are going into libraries and trying to get rid of certain books. We've not had that yet in Springfield or Greene County. It could happen tomorrow, but it hasn't happened yet. Just recently, our board made a change in policy, and that is that before it was just kind of general. Anybody could fill out a reconsideration form, or anybody could fill out a form and ask to address our library board. Now the new policy says you have to be a citizen of Greene County, meaning you pay property taxes, or you have to have a library card. People can have library cards that live outside of Greene County if they pay a yearly fee. So now you have to be served specifically by our library in order to ask for a reconsideration or speak to the library board on one of these topics, because it's just not fair just to have somebody from Arizona to drop in and decide they don't like how our library is serving our patrons. And so our board did make that change at their last board meeting in April.
Running a library is a different job than it was 20 years ago.
It is, yeah.
But there's some good things, too. In
Oh,
the
yes.
few minutes that we have left, tell me what you're most proud about that's been accomplished and what you're excited about for the future.
Probably my most exciting things is we got a new mobile library, and we're one of the libraries that's still serving people out in the county and also taking that to people in the city that really can't get to our library because they have disabilities or no transportation, and we go to certain areas, and we also take the library out to children in the summer. And then the second one is Schweitzer Brentwood. We gutted that, left it a neighborhood library because we know our community and we listen to our community. And that's what the neighbors said. They wanted a neighborhood library. And we gutted it and made it into a gorgeous, beautiful library. I can't take credit for that. The architects and the builders, it was wonderful. And I can't tell you how many people still to this day, and it's been 5 or 6 years, tell me how wonderful it is and thank you. And when I first moved here, it was pretty dark and it had been finished in 1971, which was a long time ago. And there was money in that year's budget to do a cosmetic overhaul. And we needed that money for something else because the recession had hit and we decided to wait. And I'm a pretty patient person. Sometimes the staff doubted me, but we eventually did something much better than the small amount of money that we had budgeted for the cosmetic. And it's gorgeous and it's really serving the people. So those are two of the big things. And what I'm looking forward to is we are so busy right now, and it's a good busy. Senator Lincoln Huff got us some ARPA money. We've got 3 projects that are about to start. We've got to also raise some money to match the ARPA funds, but we're going to build an auditorium at the Library Center that's much larger than what we have now. We can only seat 150 people. So we're hoping to build one that will seat between 400 and 500 people.
Oh, wow. Big deal.
Yes, and it's going to have retractable seating that will move against the wall like basketball seating, except it has real theater seats so that we can also use it for a flat floor and have meals or dinners. Right now, nonprofits and the government agencies and businesses doing training can use our auditorium for free, and that's still going to be the case. But we're also, if we're able to, going to open it up and rent it to other organizations that might want to use that on the south side of town. We are also going to do some work on Midtown Carnegie. We're going to replace water pipes, some of which are original to 1905. We are going to replace the boiler with an up-to-date air conditioning system because we learned during COVID that we needed to put good filters like they use in hospitals during the pandemic, and we can't do that with what we have now. We need something newer that we can be safer if anything like that happens again. And we also desperately need a new elevator, for ours has broken, and sadly, you can't get to the second floor right now. And we hope to get this project started really, really soon because we desperately need that elevator. And then we are going to build a new, larger library in the city of Republic. We've been wanting to do that well before this ARPA money came along. That city is growing so quickly, it needs some of the amenities that the city of Springfield has for their businesses and citizens. We only have a 10,000 square foot library there. We're going to hopefully at least double the size of that, if not more, and have some of these amenities, meeting rooms, maker spaces, co-op working places, maybe a larger meeting room there. We're very excited to work with the City of Republic, and we hope that we're working really hard every day on these projects and hope they come across really soon.
Well, I think it's great. And I think one of the things, about libraries and books are the exchange of ideas through books, but of course, you're taking another step farther. Maybe with more and more people coming to the library to interact with each other, maybe some of the barriers and disagreements that we're seeing these days can be diminished.
I hope so. That would be a great outcome.
Regina, thank you for being our guest today for In Our Town.
Certainly.
That's it for this week, and many thanks for listening. If you'd like to listen to other episodes, you can visit the Springfield Daily Citizen website at sgfcitizen.org/In Our Town, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.